Welcome back, fellow Illumineers, to be our guest. Yes, I know I was supposed to get this out last week. I am old now. I turned 40 last year, and I put my back out. I was going to record this voiceover last week, and I put my back out. So here we are. We've got the second in our series of live draft videos. Now, I'm not sure if we'll get more than two, because as you can imagine, finding a Archazia's Island draft is hard to come by sometimes. So this might be the last one of this series, but I'm going to try and do more live drafts. I'm going to try and do some cube drafts. We'll probably have an introduction video on what is cube, how to build cube, hopefully maybe with a guest or two. And then we're going to do some live cube drafts. So that'll give you a bit of a change of pace. But like you, I'm also struggling to build up the limited scene here. I know for all of you draft lovers out there, for all of you limited lovers, it is a challenge. I know it's not easy, but if you love it like I do, we got to keep working at it. Let's keep growing it together. Share this out to your local game group, to your player base. See if they enjoy it. See if it's something that they're interested in. You're like, Heath, I need you to be more engaging because you're losing my friends here. I'm trying. Obviously, I try to lead with just my thoughts, right? My feelings about it. But I will try and be more engaging as well. So with that in mind, let's get to the draft and see if we can learn something from it. See if we can maybe go together on it. Actually, I was going to segue and say, let's play a little game with it if you're so inclined, because I'd love to hear it. If you're so inclined, have Dreamborn up when you're watching this video and put your picks in Dreamborn as the packs come around. Obviously, it'll be not exact because a card that I take won't then be in the pack when it comes back around. So it's not going to be a perfect science, but still, I'd love to see if you want to post a link to your Dreamborns, make them public, the deck list for your limited deck. Cut it down to 40 and let me know what you would have drafted in this space. I'd love to see it. I think that would be a lot of fun. So we'll see. Maybe I'll get one of you to do that. But if you're so inclined, play along with me and post the link to Dreamborn in chat there. All right. Let's get started with the draft. Now, I must say that unfortunately this was a 6-person pod, as I said. It is a bit of a challenge. So as a result, you're going to see cards coming back around early. Now, what's the consequence of a lower than 8-person draft pod? Well, the consequence is that the decks tend to be a little bit weaker, right? You don't have as many cards in the card pool. So ultimately, the first few picks are going to be just about as strong. But once you start getting back around again, if a pack was weak to begin with, it's still going to be weak, right? So typically the decks are a little bit weaker if you don't have the 8-person pods, but I still think it's just as great a draft experience for the most part. So I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. We've got our first pack coming up here. You'll see I now have a background there. Ghetto as it is. This is from the game Mysterium, if any of you know it. Sadly, I'm not a DM or a GM. I don't have a screen for that. But I did have Mysterium games, so I use that. Just so you don't have people's faces in the background. Because that's awkward for them, obviously. And I'm sure you all will find this a pleasant background. So there you go. All right. I really debated taking Shere Khan here. He's the most powerful card in the pack. But the uninkable, the discarding your hand, I've got him rated relatively highly in my draft review, but I'm really hesitant to take a uninkable and such a niche card right off the bat without knowing how the rest of my deck's going to play out. So I think I would very much defend your choice for taking him, but I love Restoring the Heart, and I know that low drops are hard to come by in this set, so Baymax and Restoring the Heart was really actually where I was going at. I think Moana is also a very viable pick. In fact, probably Baymax shouldn't be picked over Moana, but there's just so many good 4-drops in this set that it's really hard to justify taking anything but the strongest 4-drops because there's just so many to come by. All right, this one was an obvious one. I pulled a few cards to the front, but come on, Thunderbolt is just busted. A 5-cost 3/7 2-lore bodyguard? Get out of here. Hey Hey was a first pick in Shimmering Skies. He was a 4.52 lore. 3.7? Easy second pick there. Removal's hard to come by, so Cheshire Cat goes to the front. Diablo, you need to be able to deal with these powerful evasives in this set. So Diablo is a top pick. I'm really wanting to play with Mad Hatter. I'm not going to get many chances to. Maybe my chances are already shot. But I think I could probably do some damage with him. But he's also a 6-drop. So again, I don't really want to play a ton of 6-drops. So I wasn't really interested in necessarily picking him up at that point. All right, this pack was really the pack of the 2-drops. Yes, Basil, again, could be considered, but again, 6-drop. So I don't want a lot of them. I don't really want to be taking them early when there are some really good 6-7 drops in this set. So I'm trying to avoid taking those early. I know 2-drops are at a premium. Phantom Blot, really functional 2-drop. Unfortunately, a lot better on the draw than on the play. Rushing in, especially in a set when not that many people are dropping 1-ink characters, probably isn't going to be all that relevant. So you might end up actually not playing him on 2, which is a common theme in this set. 1 and 2 drops that you don't necessarily want to play on turn 1 or turn 2. Toby was obvious here. Come on, Toby's an amazing 1-drop. Absolutely want to play him on 1. So this is one of the more powerful big drops that I was talking about. What is effectively a 6 cost. There's almost no time where you can't deal damage to an opponent's character. Though oddly enough, I ran into a few times where I'm like, I don't really want to be. So it's not every time, but it's enough that he's effectively a 6-drop for 6/4 resist. Yeah, 2 lore. I was tempted by Elsa here, even though I gave her an F, just because Susie's such a mid card. Susie is such a C-D card that I was really tempted to take Elsa, but yeah. Maybe I should have just taken the foil Troubadour for value. He's getting some traction. It's late in the pack. Again, this is a 6-person pod, so your value of cards is going to decrease quicker. I actually ended up putting this in as Pepper because I thought it was Pepper when I was replaying this. I took Freckles. Spoiler alert. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other because they're both very D cards. But this is obviously not Pepper. It's Freckles, but nobody cares. It's going to get cut really quickly. I'm really happy to see Mariano here. A solid body. I hold on to cough from it to call out. Oh, I wonder if someone's going to make it work this time. Someone did not make it work this time. TikTok functional, Mr. Smee garbage, Cogsworth also functional. I probably should have taken Cogsworth there, maybe, I don't know. The 5/6 body, there's something to be said for it. King Stefan, I think so much better than Chernobog. Again, wouldn't necessarily fault you for taking Chernobog there. It's interesting. Could do well, but the uninkability and the weak body for the cost kills me. I was really tempted to rip this up. All right. First pick of pack 2. Bucky goes straight to the front. And then there's Bagheera. So, just so you know, historically, I don't get bombs in draft. You might notice I'm showing this to others. I'm like, whee! I don't typically get bombs in draft. I often have to look at everyone else drafting their bombs and just be like, I'm just going to draft solid value and beat you. But it was really nice to see a bomb. And we're going to talk about it a lot in the coming games. All right, so Mittens was in the back there. I don't know if I pull it to the front or not, but suffice to say, at this point, I've already picked Bucky in my head. I'm looking through the rest of the cards because I want you to see them just so you can make that pick at home. But for me, it's a slam dunk Bucky. Anna's solid, Coda's solid, Mittens solid. Bucky, for me, is so far away the best. 3-drop is slim, and 3-drop is typically where you want your curve to be at its peak in terms of the highest density of cards at that cost. And Bucky's potentially the best. I can't remember. Oh, no, Perlo is the best, but Bucky's definitely up there. All right. So we've got a potentially stronger 3-drop in Peg, and we've got Hey Hey and Cybug at 1 and 2 that aren't as strong, but are more needed in terms of cost. I think I took Peg here, but I can't even remember for sure. I wouldn't fault you for any of these 3 picks. That depends on what you picked up until now. I think I was most tempted by Hey Hey other than this, because the 1-drops are so much slimmer. But all right, so we've got Lady, we've got Stephen. If you watch this, which I'm not sure you do, Mr. Stephen Gettle, he was on my review for 5-drops. Stephen, you were right. I will admit when I was wrong. I really wanted to rate All Is Found higher. I wanted to make it work. At this point, I'm willing to admit you were right. All right, so we took Lady there. Hopefully that was a pretty obvious choice there. She's much more powerful than anything else that was in that pack. Likewise, Beagle Boys was a treat here at this pick. Relative to the rest of this pack, not even close. I don't even know why I bothered flipping through it. If anyone's not taking Beagle Boys here, please tell me in the comments why. All right, another pretty bad pack. I'm not thrilled by Mim, but she is functional. She is interesting. I think she necessitates having some bigger bodies because her ability wants you to challenge, right? You're exerting your opponent's characters, obviously for the sake of challenging. So if you don't have bodies that want to be challenging, her effect becomes a lot less impactful. I don't tend to draft those decks as much. I pulled Susie to the front, but Jebediah with the support I think is a much better 4-drop. I don't think it's very good, but I think it's much better. The resist wasn't unusable either. Again, I think I mentioned this in the review. It's probably not enough to really put it over the top, but it's relevant. I thought this was the mittens that I'd looked at earlier, but I don't think it was. Now that I'm kind of doing the math, I don't think this was the mittens from earlier. I think this was a second mittens that was in these packs going around. Some people really like Hades. Let's speak about Hades for a second. Some people really like Hades. Some people are playing it. Frank Karsten, who is an incredible player, rates it highly. I rate it as an F, and I still do. Nothing I've seen so far has changed me in that. The removal in the set is really weak. So you'd think a removal body, great, right? Unfortunately, your 3-cost or less aren't really that impactful in this set. There's not a lot of bomb 3-drops or less. Perla, Bucky, who you'd be happy to see go anyway. So really Perla is the big one that I'm thinking of right now. And at the cost of damaging your character, but more specifically at the cost of playing a 6-cost uninkable character with not a great body. Not a terrible one, but not a great body. 6-cost uninkable, I'm really not interested there. So I will never draft Hades. I will never play Hades. If you do, all the power to you. I just can't justify it. All right. Pack 3, pick 1. Fidget right to the front. There's a Minnie Mouse in there. I don't care. She's not worth that much. She's definitely not good in limited. Fidget by far. Fidget, Cusco, Miss Bianca, all solid, but Fidget is by far the best out of that group. I've wanted to draft Cusco a few times, and I've always found he's in the pack with Fidget, so I don't get to draft it, because obviously Fidget is the better 4-drop evasive. So I've had to pass quite a few Cuscos for Fidget. Okay, not a lot in this pack also, but Goofy is, I think, a really solid, playable 7-drop evasive. Again, 7 drops you gotta be careful with, but it's inkable. So what's the risk? The risk is, and you'll see it in one of the games, I think, that you hold on to it for too long. So it's gotta be, unless you're at like 5 or 6 ink, you should be inking it. Because you may never get there. And there was one game that I held on to it for too long. So that is the risk. We are once again faced, shout out Drew, Mr. Cube Club himself, and he's one of the ones I'm hoping to invite on the show at some point. Loves this Wendy v Panic debate, and I will slam Panic every single time. Not every single time, it depends on how many 4-drops I've got, but I am thrilled to you see me going like, a second Panic? Yes! Slam it down! I don't even think I finished looking at the rest of the pack at this point. Cusco, the whale was interesting in there, but second Panic for sure. So Wendy v Panic, I'm taking Panic every time. I do not expect Wendy to be impactful enough by the time she gets out. Very good card. But by the time she gets out, Raja, easy pick here. One of the best 2-drops. I think I might have it at the best 2-drop. Really, really good. And it's proved to be, right? Yeah. Restoring the Heart is in the format. It's just, it comes up so infrequently. I had it come up, and it still didn't feel that busted. that I removed their character and drew a card because it was just a 2-drop. So why am I spending it on that? Miss Bianca is the obvious choice here. Again, Basil, the 6-drop. I've already got some high cost characters, about as many as I'd want to play anyway. Maybe one more, and we've still got another pack left. So I'm not interested in Basil at this point. Orville for me is just a 3-cost 4/3. Yes, might combo with Miss Bianca at some point, but it's so unlikely. In fact, someone did that against me, and guess what? They still lost. But the fact of the matter is, it's just so unlikely that you can't really draft it for that. But in that pack, it was still the best card. I think at this point, I've got 4 playable 2-drops. Berlioz for me has been so good, that 5 willpower. I was debating on the review, do I like the 2/5 over the 3/4? I wasn't sure.
You get.
Why is he got the audio on again? It's my bit now. It's my gag. If I see a totally unplayable rare in the last pick, I might just keep doing that. Not in my cube, obviously.
It's now a routine.
But you won't find unplayable rares in my cube.
This horrible rare that shouldn't exist.
Another rare. Oh my goodness.
Is anyone out there actually shocked by this, by the way?
Yeah,
Because Riley was very shocked. I'm like, it's like a 5-cent rare. It's okay. Watch, at some point someone cracks glass slipper and it becomes a $10 rare. And I come back to this video and cry. Alright. So, we got some good low drops here. Yes, card soldiers, solid. But Mulan is the much better 1-drop. Baymax, solid as well. But I think when you can get the best 1-drop versus a playable 2-drop, I'm very much more interested in Mulan. And Mulan is playable later. If you've got a dead card, maybe I'm hung around to that Goofy too long, but I know I'm not getting to 7 ink. I'm on 5, and I've got Mulan. Do I ink her, or do I play this draw card and discard Goofy? I'm probably tempted to just play Mulan and discard Goofy. That's an extreme circumstance. See? See what I mean? I can't draft Cusco. It's just Fidget. He just keeps coming back. I will never draft Cusco over Fidget, that's for sure. That one I can say definitively never, because they're both 4-drops. They're both 4-drop evasives. Fidget is so good. Getting 2 Fidget and 2 Panic again just feels unfair. But I'll take it. You know what? I'll take it. And may I just say, to anyone in the comments that's like, oh, well, you know, they're just feeding him good cards. Everyone at this table has watched my videos. They know to take Fidget. There was obviously good cards in that pack that they needed. In fact, I believe one of the Fidgets was someone that was just so completely down on 3-drops that they needed to pass Fidget for a Perla, because it's like, 3-drops, I need the 3-drops. I might prefer Fidget, but I need the 3-drops. Speaking of great 3-drops, oh, and guess what? I'm even higher on Deny now than I was before. That 2 resist, 2 versus 1 is making all the difference on Deny. So as high as I was on him before, I think I need to go even higher. Still not Perla level for me, but probably better than Bucky. Possibly. All right. We've got a 1-cost uninkable versus a 2-cost uninkable. Again, I'm feeling okay about the... I put these... It's funny. I was wondering why the Toby showed up on the right. I got those out of order in terms of which one need to be revealed first. Whatever. You guys get the idea. Editing skills are so-so. Okay, great pickup by Cybug. It really reinforced picking that Toby. But let's just say that picking the Toby was still the right choice without knowing that. Because there's just so few 1-drops that are even playable, let alone good. And Toby is so good. And there are 2-drops that might not be as good as Phantom Blot, but are perfectly serviceable that you're going to get around. Like Cybug. Great. Like Baymax. Some people are really high on Baymax. I am not. This is a little bit better pick than I'd normally expect him at, but not so much more. So don't get too shocked about me picking up Baymax there. I really am not that high on him. if it was a 2-3, I'd be thrilled. 2-3, 2 lore into play exerted. Keto, I was flicking this because I was debating Keto when it was around the first time, and the fact that it came back around, Gaetan, obvious pick here. Love the 3-cost 3/4s. But Keto I was debating on the first go around, so when it came back around, I'm like, alright, I'll take it. These are both Ds. Calhoun is a 5/5/2 lore D versus a 1/2/1 lore D. So, I'm like, yeah. Now there's not just 2 glass slippers. There's like 16 of them. Alright, so we've got 3 cards that are already cut. 2 of them are in pieces. One of them is over there. We're definitely keeping all the 1-drops. That is easy. What do we got for 2-drops here? I mean, I think the only one that's really, or 2 that are really debatable are Freckles and Magical Maneuvers. Oh, and Honey Lemon. That's right. Honey Lemon also somewhat debatable here. So the rest, for sure. The other 2, just in the maybe pile, though. I don't think they're automatic cuts. Okay. All good here. Yeah. Hero's a maybe. Yeah. Orville, I don't think is maybe enough. Yes, I think I categorized it as like a C-, but it's not a maybe enough. There's enough maybes in there already, and we need more 3-drops. Susie, I agree with a maybe just because of the density of 4-drops I've already got. Yeah, happy with the rest. Happy with that count of 4-drops, right? Do I have too many 4-drops? I think I debated putting Drizella in there. I'm pretty sure it made the cut, because I think the density of 4-drops is right there. I think I shouldn't have even put that in the maybe pile. We got a lot of 5-drops here, so TikTok definitely in the maybe pile. You could make an argument for All Is Found should have been in the maybe pile, and in fact should have been cut, but I'm like, I want it to work. At this point, I was not yet convinced. I am convinced now. Calhoun, absolute maybe pile. Okay, so we could stand to have one more higher drop in the deck. So maybe that's a reason to have kept Calhoun, but I like it like the least out of all of them, so I cut it. Probably could have made an argument for keeping her in, but that's okay. I'm happy with being low to the ground. I'm happy with being a lower overall cost deck. If I average out my average ink cost, I'm happy with being lower when I can. All right. I noticed I didn't give the X on the Baymax's charging station. That is most definitely the Axiest of X. Yeah, Drizella made the deck right off the bat. I much prefer the 4-cost 4/4s over the 3/4 lore, because the 3/4 lore isn't really doing good at either thing. It's not really challenging or surviving particularly well for a 4-drop. It's not really questing particularly well because it's a 3/4 body. So I'd rather have the character that challenges better. Magical Maneuvers should have been a cut. I called it a cut in my review. Some people told me I should reconsider it. I did. I regret that. All right. Round 1, matching mats here. Let me just say, round 1, my opponent is new to the game, has only picked up the game like a couple of weeks ago, and this was their first draft. And I gotta say, you'll see a few things that I'm going to critique here, but let me just say that's just to say that's not what I would do. Relative to where this player is at in the game, I was really impressed with their gameplay. So shout out you. You did really, really well, and I don't think I would have done nearly that well just getting into the game as soon as you are. So props to you. So any critiques that I put out here, let me just say right now, are just to say I would do differently for the education of our viewers. And I say education very much tongue-in-cheek, which is to say I don't assume that I am right here. This is just my perspective. This is how I would go about it. Love to hear your perspective. Love to hear how you would draft, how you would play, by all means. Okay, so I kept a 2-3 and 2-4s. Normally, I would have maybe just kept a 2-3 and 4 and been happy with it, but Panic and Fidget are just so good that I was tempted to. I think the right play here in most circumstances is just keep 2-3-4, throw the rest back, looking for a 1-drop. I didn't find it, but that's okay. My opponent won the die roll, so they're going to be going first. I tend to put the card I intend to ink next on the very right-hand side of my hand. So you'll see there that Magical Maneuvers is the one that I'm thinking about inking next because it is the least playable card in my hand. Opponent puts down a card soldier, so they're going to get some early tempo plays before I can put anything out there because I don't have a 1. But that's okay. I drew So Much to Give, which I think is imminently playable. I'm very happy with it. I've got 2 2-drops already. If I didn't have 2 2-drops here, I might consider inking it. The reason I'm thinking of inking a 2-drop is because there's diminishing returns on them. So I don't really feel the need to have more than 1 2-drop out. I want to go 2, 3, 4, and then another 4 if I don't want to ink at that point, or into 5 now that I've drawn Bagheera. That is the obvious line, right? So I want to go 2, 3, 4, 5 now. So when am I going to play another 2-drop? Turn 6? Nah. So ink one of the 2-drops, keep the better cards, and So Much to Give might prove to be a useful card later, and a card that I can sing to draw into more. Maybe I might need more ink at that point if I've got just like Bagheera, Panic, Fidget left in hand. I don't want to ink any of them. Okay, so here's the first critique, which is just playing Canine Crunchies at all. For anything but ink. It is only a D in so much that it is ink. I think I put it as an inkable F. Don't play that card. Now, my opponent admitted that they were going for synergies. They were specifically going for puppy synergies, and they were going for, I think, pirate synergies, if I remember correctly. You know my feelings if you've watched any of my videos by now on synergies and draft. Unless it's something like Ally, where there's so much of it. There was, what, like 50 allies in this set? Unless it's so abundant that you're going to seek some consistency in your deck, you're just not likely to see these synergies ever play out. Now, I made a mistake here, owning it fully. I quested with Raja because I forgot Grandmother Fa was on quest ability. I thought it was an on play ability. So I forgot that they'd be able to quest with Grandmother Fa and then challenge in with the card soldiers. But I think, and I could have played it off as such, baiting them into questing with Grandmother Fa and challenging is great because then I can just challenge in with the Nahi afterwards. And it's like, okay, you trade your 1-drop for my 2-drop, but I get to eat Grandmother Fa for free. And you'll see me being like, oh, it's on quest. I thought it was on play. So one could argue that this was the right play in that it baited them into basically giving me a free eat on Grandmother Fa. But the thing I will say is I think it was a mistake in that was not my intention. That was not my plan. So have your plan fully fleshed out. That doesn't mean that it'll always go the way you plan, but try and make sure you're reading the cards, understanding the cards, so that you're having full information when you make these decisions and not making assumptions like Heath did. So get that free eat, and right now, unless they drop a pirate, my opponent isn't threatening Denahi at all. They hard cast This Is My Family, which is that I probably would have sung there, right? Questing for 1 isn't really going to make a huge difference, and unless you've got a pirate, you're not challenging into Denahi. Maybe they've got a low-cost pirate they thought they might draw, but I would have just sung there so that I could play a 4 or 5 drop at this point. Inking Maid Marian. Perfectly playable card, but not really on this list. And playing Freckles, which, as I just mentioned, I think is the lowest of Ds, which is why I didn't include it in my deck, but they're going for the puppy synergies. So this is now a 2/3 Freckles for what it's worth, but giving Denahi negative strength there did nothing. So it's now a 2-drop 2/2 effectively if it wasn't for the Canine Crunchies. So, I mentioned I'd be talking about Bagheera. Bagheera makes things feel unfair. So I quest for 2, and I believe I give Bagheera evasive here, because yes, it's got body card, but I don't necessarily want anyone challenging into it yet, so I'd rather protect it so that it is protecting my Fidget, but otherwise it is also protected. But yeah, Bagheera just feels unfair. And this is where I think I have more fun not playing bombs, if I'm honest. I don't necessarily love the feeling of just playing this card that's like, what are you going to do now? Like, how do you beat this? I am behind currently on lore technically, but I am obviously so far ahead on board that my opponent is effectively forced to challenge into Bagheera, either here or at some point. And, how's that going to turn out for you? So, Another thing about Bagheera, and I can't stress this enough, whether it's something like Bagheera or something that acts similarly, if you're going to challenge it, to take care of it, do it before you play anything else. So, for example, my opponent could have challenged in here with both characters, would have lost both characters, but then Bagheera would be done. Oh no, couldn't have. Never mind, evasive. But let's assume for a second it doesn't, because it does come up later, right? So I'll want to reference this back. Me being an idiot, yes. I want to reference the time where I forgot about the play that I made. Speaking of cards feeling unfair, if you're going to challenge the Bagheera, do it right off the bat. Please don't play any characters before you do so, because it's going to damage those characters. I know that sounds like an obvious thing, but sometimes it's easy to forget. You think about, okay, what am I going to play? Okay, now what am I going to do? That is sometimes people's order of thinking. Try to map out the whole turn as best you can, and then think about, okay, now what sequence do I need to do these things in? Ugh. Double fidget is just ridiculous. Get out of here. I hate to encourage you to fast forward, but I mean, this is just unfair. So, this is where we often talk about like Prince and Pauper formats. Is a format bomb heavy? Is it a Prince set? Or is it more value heavy, right? More spread out. Pauper set, right? This is very much a Prince set. There are some truly busted limited cards in this set. And unfortunately, a lot of them are at uncommon and common. Yes, there's busted cards like Bagheera that's a legendary, that's fine. But the most busted card in the set's a rare, which is, yes, a rare, but still a lot more common than a legendary, for example. And then you've got Fidget and Panic and Perla and Snow White and all these cards that are just unfairly balanced for limited that are going to be abundant. So how do you fight something like this? Well, I've fought against it, but fighting fire with fire, which is to say I had my own unfair uncommons that I fought with it. If you don't, it's going to feel real hard to combat this. So I'm going to be honest, I don't think that Archazia's Island's necessarily going to be my favorite draft format. Shimmering Skies I loved, because so many of the best cards were uninkable. So you really had to... Yeah, the game was there over already. You really had to challenge yourself to be careful with what you drafted. Because, you know, if you just drafted all the best cards, you might end up with 12, 14 uninkables in your deck, which is just completely non-functional. So I love Shimmering Skies because I found it truly challenging. I don't know that this set is going to feel as challenging, in that it's going to be really challenging sometimes, but not in a way that's really surmountable. You're going to have these times where your opponent's just got 2 fidgets on board, and it's like, okay, next. Knowing that I'm going second, I kept a card like Drizella because that's much better on the draw, much more controlling, right? You're not usually the aggressor for questing when you're on the draw. So, great body for that. Likewise, Orville. Baymax was my only 2-drop, so I needed to keep that. We see Bagheera again. There I go, inking Drizella, in spite of what I just said, because I have lots of 4-drops, and I really wanted to play Kita. So that was where I was at. I don't know if that's necessarily the right play. If my opponent comes out real heavy with like a 2-lore Quester on turn 2 and whatnot, I'm probably going to regret that. Hey, look, speaking of which, it's Baymax. So this is where I might regret inking Drizella because I'm going to be less able to control. Right? I'm going to be behind quite a bit. If my opponent quests out here and is already at 4, and my best option is to challenge Baymax into Baymax, and they drop out a 3-drop. That's aggressive. What's my 4-drop? Kita? That's not very good into my opponent being ahead on lore and on board. So, and there we go. A 2-lore Quester that's going to be hard to deal with. I'm in rough shape at this point. I really should have kept Drizella there. I shouldn't have been greedy. I should have inked All Is Found, first of all. And now I ink Orville because I drew Denahi. So Orville was probably the better 4-drop in this situation, or a 3-drop in this situation, well, not even that. So the problem with Orville is 4-3 normally into 1-4, fantastic. But Raya's probably going to get evade or resist for a couple of turns. So the 4 strength isn't as relevant. So actually, yeah, never mind. Scratch that. Denahi is just out and out better. It's obviously better in 98% of the time, but there might be a situation where Orville's better. Having that 4 strength over the 3 strength matters. I don't think this is one of those. So, Speaking of which, this is where you're going to see the beauty of that resist 2. Watch for it here in a second on my opponent's turn 5. So we drop Kita again. Really poor 4-drop here into this situation. My opponent's at 6 lore. They've got 5 lore on board here. So, Denahi takes no damage. And now all of a sudden, my opponent has support 2 on board, has 3 characters on board, and is not going to be able to remove Denahi from the board. They're going to think to challenge it. I'm going to remind them that it's resist 2. Right now, Pain only has 3 strength. It would deal 1 damage. And then Raya couldn't do anything. And if they just challenge him, obviously doesn't do anything. That 2 resist here into a board like this is beautiful. Right? Now, my opponent is ahead on board and they are ahead on lore. They don't really need to be challenging Denahi. I would just be questing out here. Put myself to 11. And now I don't know what's in their hand. This is assuming I've got any sort of threat in hand. If I've got another 2 lore quester in hand, yeah. See, they don't quest at all. And I think that's a mistake. It might be because they only have Kakamora in hand that they're concerned about that. But I think getting up to 11 here. And what's my best course of action at that point? Challenging Kita into Pain and Denahi into Raya. And then Bolt still on the board. You go to 13 at that point. But then, of course, I drop Bagheera, which is just ridiculous. And Kita coupled with a bodyguard is so sick. This is why I want to drop Kita, because I'm like, Kita into Bagheera. All right, so I can't even see what I put in the inkwell there. Maybe someone else can notice it for me. But Mittens is the one that goes back on top. And rightfully so. And again, I'm still holding on to All Is Found, because I'm like, it's going to work. It's going to happen. But Kita's giving me so much ink at this point that I don't even need it. And I've only got 1 card in the discard anyway. So it's like, you were right, Stephen. Okay, you were right. All Is Found is not good. Ramp is not good and limited. I was right to begin with. But I went against my better judgment. I normally hate Ramp. Not hate, but I'm very hesitant to play Ramp in limited. But I thought maybe All Is Found this time with the amount of 7-drop evasives that are so good. And it's a song, maybe. No, it's not good. Okay. So, my opponent is deciding what to do here. Because Bagheera just messes things up horribly all the time. Yeah. So, maybe it was right for them to wait a turn. Maybe because they foresaw having Maid Marian. I don't know if that was in their hand already. So Maid Marian does mess up the math a little bit, but I think I'm going to make some pretty good plays here to get around it. So Maid Marian specifically, they've got a couple allies on board that mess with my math in terms of Maid Marian doing that 1 damage for allies being challenged. Because specifically, I can't have Bagheera banish this turn. If Bagheera is banished on my turn, the 2 damage has no effect. So I need Bagheera to be banished on their turn or not at all. So if I challenge into Bolt, for example, and then they ping 1 damage onto Bagheera, I'm very sad. So I need to be very careful with my math here. Let's see how we play it out. What would you do in this situation? Pause it here for a moment and say in the comments, what would you do to make this board work? Knowing that I think Pain is an ally, Bolt is Raya is a hero. I believe Kakamora is an ally. Bolt, I think, is a hero, but it might be an ally. But I know pain is. So specifically, I took care of pain first because I wanted to know where the ping was going. I wanted to know where the damage was going. I almost tried to put it on Denahi for a second until I reminded them, no, the resist still counts. So I wanted to know where the ping was going before I did anything else. Okay, so they put it on Bagheera, rightfully so that I can't challenge it to bolt, just as a matter of cause. So what do I do in this situation? I'm actually pretty happy with what I did here. Play Panic. Move the damage from Raya to Bolt so that I can take out Bolt and so that I can then take out Raya with Bagheera. So Bagheera is safe because only taking 2 damage and I'm able to take out Bolt. That's what I need to do. I need to take out their two lore questers as the main priority here. So the natural instinct is always to move damage from your characters to your opponents because it's the best value, right? But specifically in that situation, I wanted to make sure that I could deal with Bolt and I could deal with Raya and that Bagheera survived. And I think that was really the main way to do it. Yes, I could have moved the 1 damage from Bagheera to Bolt, and I think it would have done the same thing, but now that I say that, yeah, he's an idiot again. See, I love these. I love these live ones because I can't go back and redo it, and you can just flame me in the comments. Yeah, I probably should have just moved the 1 damage off Bagheera, but I was still very happy with how that worked out. Yeah. So he plays another Kakamora, so that Kakamora gets the Challenger effect. Didn't need it in this situation, but here we are. Made Marion Quest, so they're up to 14, so they're getting dangerously close now, but I'm also controlling the board quite effectively. So obviously we're going to take out Maid Marian, that's an easy one. We drew Mulan, and it's time for Goofy. And this is what's going to terrify my opponent, and rightfully so. Alright, we got Peg and the Magical Maneuvers. That is an easy one. Magical Maneuvers into the Inkwell. Let's put out Goofy. It's time for the big boy. Now, I've got no reason to ink here because I can play both my characters out next turn, and I have really no need to do otherwise. I can't play out all 3 characters, including the Peg that's on the top of my deck, but I just don't have any need to ink here. Okay, my opponent's up to 15 now, 16 on board with Kakamora, so things are starting to get tense. All right, things are starting to get dicey. All right, we got the Queen there. I love that I can share my mistakes with you all. I hope this allows you to give yourself some grace that you all make mistakes, because I was really proud of that whole move with Bagheera and Panic and all that, and now in hindsight I'm like, I could just move the 1 damage from Bagheera, but that's fine. Alright, we got Mittens, we got Peg, Mulan's waiting in the wings, waiting on the bench as it were. I'm not about to win anytime soon, so I continue to activate Kita so that I was hoping to find something a little bit bigger to go with Mulan, but Mulan has the draw and discard, so you never know what comes up in there. And we'll quest for a few there. Now this is where these pirate synergies are so bad. Now that there's only the 1 Kakamora, the 1 strength on it is just terrible. Right? They can't even deal with Panic at this point. They could challenge both into Kita, but that feels like a big waste when you're at 15. You're just questing out at this point, right? So, I mentioned that Mulan is also good later in the game. Well, guess what we drew? Now, Peg could have drawn us that as well, but you're going to see it in a moment why I wanted Peg on the board. Okay, so let's get rid of good old Roger there. All right, so we've dealt with 1. We've dealt with another. Oh, shaking the table there. So, now that Goofy has challenged, all of my other characters quest for +1, which is really exciting, and I go about questing with everything. Potentially rightfully so, but I think I should have gotten rid of Queen there. Because you'll see I only deal 3 damage to it, because I have to, because it's reckless, right? If they had another, this is my family, or they had a honey Marin or something like that, they could have won there. So I should not have let my opponent get up to 19. I should have made sure that they stayed on 18, because I could still win out after this point. Right, I got 3 lore unexerted. So I absolutely should have challenged Mittens or challenged Peg and Denahi into the Queen. Into the Queen of Hearts specifically. Yeah, I should not have let my opponent get up to 19 there. So another thing to do, I know Goofy makes it really exciting to start questing out for a bunch, but not necessarily worth it when you can still win the game the turn after. All right. So my round 2 opponent this week is Riley, who was my round 3 opponent last week. Looking forward to this match, if anything, because I just like looking at that mat. I need one of those for myself. It's sweet. It might make me want to play something other than Ursula. I'm not even like a huge Big Hero 6 fan. I enjoy Big Hero 6, but that art, that mat is so sick. All right. So we keep, again, a particularly unexciting hand, but Mulan, although I don't love to play her on turn 1, is a fine turn 1 play, and Gaetan is a fine turn 3 play. You notice we rolled the dice after because we just forgot. I'm like, I don't care. My hand, I would keep the same hand with what I had regardless of if I'm going first or second, so let's just roll now rather than redo the shuffle. We play things a little loose sometimes. That would definitely not be the official way to do it. All right. So we've got Toby here because Mulan, I'm, as you saw earlier, not necessarily disappointed or unhappy to play later in the game. And Toby's obviously uninkable, but why ink Gaetan over Mulan is because I think I almost prefer Mulan a little bit later to maybe play 2 characters in one turn and get rid of a card that might be a little bit dying in my hand. And we have the Gaetan replacement in Mariano in hand. We've also got Bucky, which is a better 3-drop as well. Water has memory. How many times do I have to say this? That is a terrible card. My opponent just spent an entire card and an entire turn finding the worst of my top 4 cards, and guess what? It's exactly the card that I needed. I didn't have a 2-drop. They found me my 2-drop. Thank you very much. Now, that was like best case scenario for sure, but when, yes, I know I've got Bagheera in the deck. I've got a bomb. But even then, it's 1 card out of 40, so you're probably not going to see it. The average difference in quality between those 4 cards are likely to be so inconsequential, either to hurt your opponent or to benefit yourself, that spending a card on it, an uninkable card that you can't ink, if that's not the right play, which it never is anyway, is so bad. Please, please, please don't draft that card. If you do, rip it up like the slipper. All right. I'm head on board here. I am really happy with my board state. My opponent is far behind. But they managed to make a mistake here. They quest with Archimedes instead of challenging into Baymax. Why? I even point to Baymax. I'm like, are you sure? Because ultimately, why are we keeping Archimedes here? I'm never going to choose it, so you're never going to draw a card off of it. So you've got a 2/2/1 lore versus your opponent's 3/2/2 lore? No, you remove the 2 lore. Even board state notwithstanding, even lore notwithstanding, that's just, Baymax is such a better card than Archimedes. You take that trade, absolutely. Now I'm able to run Bucky into it and keep Baymax out to quest for 2 later, right? Especially with Fidget. Now I can protect it. So my opponent has, Kenai? Is it on the other? Kenai. JD on the other end of the board. So you'll notice I don't quest because I'm not going to give them that free eat. Now, that might be I bait them into challenging with Kenai and they take out my Baymax and then I take out the Kenai before its ability can trigger, but they're still getting a 2-for-1 out of that. I don't want to give them that 2-for-1, especially when I've got Fidget there, right? So I just sit back a turn. My opponent Riley tries to quest with the Kenai, and I say, no, I will not let you quest You do not quest with that into a board that can eliminate it, right? It is only a card you want to be challenging with. You only ever quest with it if there's like 2 bodyguards in front of it. I don't know. So I finally realize I have to start inking All Is Found. That's me being like, I guess I'm finally going to ink you in the time where I should. So why don't I put Bagheera out here? Well, I don't need a bodyguard. Fidget's my bodyguard. The bodyguard would get me 1 more lore with the good boy, with Toby. So what's a bodyguard doing here? So I put the Beagles out because they could be impactful the following turn with that rush, whereas the bodyguard isn't necessarily doing anything for me. Alright, my opponent has a bunch of weak characters on board. Kenai, obviously, if it can challenge in, is very effective. But if it can't, like with a bunch of evasives, then not so bad, right? So my opponent quests for 3, so unthreatening, and here I make another mistake. You're welcome. Just filling all of the mistakes in here. Alright, so I put in Bagheera and give it rush. Perfectly reasonable, right? There's nothing on my other side of the board that's going to be able to eliminate on my turn, so the bodyguard and the 2 damage to all their characters still plays out. Once again, I'm not remembering the cards. I'm dismissing the cards that I dismissed in my review. Candlehead or whatever is a bad card, is a D card, or a C- or whatever I rated it at. So I'm not really paying much attention to it. So instead of challenging into it, I challenge here into Penny. Here's the problem. Bagheera's effect is slightly mitigated when my opponent can heal that damage. And it just so happens that that character has the ability that when it's banished, it removes damage. If I banish it here, it's not removing damage from anyone. Value averted. If I don't banish it here, and it gets banished on my opponent's turn when things are taking damage, all of a sudden, it's gotten its value. So I was just thinking, oh, I'll take 1 less damage, from the character. It's got resist 1, it'll take no damage. Well, why do I care that it takes no damage? Everything that's on the other side of the board that can challenge it, other than Candlehead, is going to deal 3 damage or more. So why do I care about having 1 damage or no damage on there? I shouldn't, is the answer. So I should have challenged into Candlehead there, but I dismissed it because I forgot what the card did. Alright, so I quest with Fidget, and I believe I gave Evasive to the Beagles, as you should. You want to protect that. Very valuable card. But I figure I've got my bodyguard, let me quest out with the other 2. Yeah, there's a good chance it's getting removed this turn, and maybe something else is getting removed. But by that point, I was less concerned because my opponent's board might end up being cleared. But hey, remember I segued to if you're going to deal with Bagheera, don't play a character first? Yeah. Don't play Mufasa in this particular instance before you challenge him to Bagheera. So I said, do you want to quest with Candlehead first because it's about to go away? They're like, yes, I would like to quest with it. Thank you. So we deal 2 damage to everything. Candlehead goes away, which then removes 2 damage from something. Oops. Notably, if I had got rid of Candlehead before, the Tweedles would have had 2 damage on there and wouldn't have been able to challenge into any of my characters. At this point, they could have challenged into Baymax and gotten rid of Baymax for free. I always say for free as in, like, my character's still on the board. Yes, it's got 3 more damage than it did before, but my character's still on the board and yours isn't. That's what I consider a free challenge, if you ever hear me reference that, right? They choose not to do that. They just scoop because obviously they can't deal with my board enough. I've got 4 lore in evasives and I've got Toby they can't deal with. But let's say I was at 2 lore less or something like that. Probably still winning that game. But them being able to deal with Baymax would have been a sad affair. So read your opponent's cards. Again, Heath. Okay. Game 2. I am once again on the draw. I have played a lot on the draw today, this day. All right, Toby, always happy to see it. Turn 1, really happy with that. Kita, again, I feel like I'm too attached to Kita. I put the rest back because it's a lot of... I need my 2, 3, 4 drop. Well, I guess I got my 4 drop. I need a 2 and 3 drop, right? I probably should have put Kita back there. It's solid, but it's not that good. I've got so much better 4 drops in this deck. I should have put Kita back. I should have taken Toby and dropped the rest, but here we are. Okay. So you'll notice the hand gets revealed as I can tell what's in the hand. All right. So we don't have a 2 drop here, which could be problematic on the draw. So hopefully Toby can put in some work for us. What should I be inking here? Well, I've got John Silver at the front as ink because it's going to be a while before I get it out. But at this point, I've got 4 4-drops in my hand, so I need to ink a 4-drop. And guess what? I ink the Kita. So the card that I should have mulliganed ends up being ink anyway. So at this point, I've still got a lot of 4-drops in my hand. 2 3-drops, 3 4-drops. Not particularly happy with that. So in a moment here, you're going to see that I don't challenge with Toby or quest with it. No, I think I quest with it instead of challenging with it. Because yes, it just means that they can challenge back. But at the same time, I'd rather force them to challenge into me and get the lore out of it. And if they quest with both, neither of them are particularly big threats for me. So ideally, I'm hoping Toby challenges into something bigger later. But at the very least, I want them to be forced to challenge into me. All right. To be honest with you, so I mentioned that. I was still debating whether I even challenge into Pain with Phantom Blot. I'd forgotten I had. I don't know that I necessarily should have, because yes, it's got Rush, but it's still just a 1-3. So I wonder if I should have kept Phantom Blot back and just waited to challenge it to like Bolt or something like that with either of them. Because, yeah, a 1-3? I don't know. I don't actually like that play. I think that was a mistake. I forgot I even did that. I think I should have held that back. We'll see. Maybe I win or lose at 19. Who knows? But Pain is just so inconsequential. Next move is obviously Denahi. Do I have something at the front that I'm looking at inking? Probably like Beagles or something like that. I think at this point it's been enough turns and I've got enough 3 and 4 drops that I've shifted John back to the left. All right, I drew Bagheera. So yeah, this hurt. I did ink Panic because I recognize with the board that they've got, I'm not likely to be taking damage right now and thus being able to move it with Panic. So Beagles might be more impactful at this point, trying to rush in and keep my opponent off lore. I don't quest here. I think I should have. Because what am I scared of? I'm scared that he's going to challenge in with Bolt. That's fine. I'm fine with that trade. I think I should have quested there. With Toby, another mistake. Oh, we're racking him up here. Okay. I've done enough editing in this video. Okay. I'm too lazy to do more, but a punt counter might be a thing at some point in the future if I can reduce my workload on editing these things. All right. As if Perla wasn't bad enough, my opponent now drops Pascal, which is a lot. So, I think I remember why I didn't quest with Toby, because I think what I was envisioning is I'm going to get Fidget out, and I am going to use Toby to challenge into Perla. But I've also got Denahi, so I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it's because I thought about this, about Denahi challenging into Bolt instead of Toby trading with him, but I think my opponent would have quested with him anyway. They're head-on lore. He gets an ability from questing the draw and discard. I think I should have just quested with Toby there. I'm not sure why I was trying to protect Toby. So Fidget out changes the math a lot. Now I'm threatening Denahi into Pascal or Perla. This should concern my opponent. I'm happy about this board state now. Perla into Pascal was a little bit much to be looking at, but man, Fidget is just great. Singing This Is My Family, 100% agree. Great play, Riley. Oh, look. Water has memory. Definitely the right to be singing there. Your one lore characters, if they can sing songs, if they don't be needed for challenge, get them singing. Questing for one versus singing the song and being able to use your ink otherwise, so much more impactful. Okay. My opponent has an ally, so they get a cheap Miss Bianca. I quest with Fidget, make Denahi evasive, and have a really favorable challenge into Pascal. So here's the question. Would I have done that if I didn't have Bagheera in hand? I don't think so. Because now my opponent could challenge Pascal into Fidget, and I'd be in a really bad way. So I think if I don't have Bagheera here, I kind of have to just let them quest with Perla for a bit until I can find another answer. Because I can't risk them challenging Pascal into Fidget. But in this case, if Bianca takes out Bagheera, Pascal gets 2 damage, and then if they do take out Fidget, at least Pascal is also going, right? I finally recognize an opportunity to quest with Toby. Yeah. Feel like Toby, my lore should be higher at this point, for sure. Gotta say, Miss Bianca, such solid value in a set with so many great allies. Really happy with her. I think you saw me pass her a couple of times. Wouldn't have faulted you for taking her in some of those spots. She's so efficient. A 5/5 body is a big threat here. So, I say no. You are not allowed to do that if you're going to challenge it to Bagheera. Believe it, at this point he says, no, I'm not going to challenge it to Bagheera. I'm like, okay. Please don't do that again. What you did with Mufasa. Because I thought for sure he was going to challenge it to Bagheera, right? I thought for sure Miss Bianca was going into Bagheera, Pascal was going into Fidget, and we were going to have a pretty even board at that point. I think that would have been the right play. Because then I would have had Denahi and Toby. 2 cards in hand. Right? And if he'd done that, I wouldn't have been able to play John Silver for cheap. So they're relying on, my opponent, Riley, is relying on King of Hearts here, right? Denahi can't challenge. Perfect, right? So I really wanted to play Restoring the Heart. I don't think I realized, Drizella's in hand. That's going to be inked. That's probably why it's not even showing in hand at this point. She's the obvious ink. I really wanted to play Restoring the Heart on Denahi to remove the damage to then be able to challenge in. But I'm like, why would I not play John Silver here? Like that'd just be silly. Let's not get too fancy, Heath. Let's play John Silver out for 6, shall we? So we run Toby into Pascal. And yeah, I have to, thought I had to specifically run Denahi into Miss Bianca. Well, it's like, no, King of Hearts, it can't challenge. I'm like, whoo, you don't get to eat my Denahi for free. Thank goodness. So at this point, I'm debating, do I want to quest with Bagheera? I don't know that it's necessarily the right choice or not. I think because I was behind on lore, I decided I need to keep pace. But I was still not particularly happy with him just trading Miss Bianca for Bagheera at this point. But I think they should have done it last turn. So if they had done that last turn, I would have had to play Drizella here. I wouldn't have been able to play John Silver. I would have had to play Drizella. I would have had Denahi, Drizella, and Toby. Not a particularly threatening board. So I think the play last turn was definitely Miss Bianca into Bagheera and Pascal into Fidget before playing their next card. So I think they're forced to play Water Has Memory here. They accidentally flashed their hand of Mufasa because they just don't have any other play. So that's their play for the turn. Ugh. And they ink Bell here because they're working towards Mufasa. First of all, I would have played Water Has Memory before inking to see what I'm playing next turn. And recognizing that I don't need the ink, obviously I would have just played Bell here. 3/3 bodies better than nothing. I probably would have just inked Mufasa if anything, but I don't know. Mufasa, much like Wendy, is just going to come down too late to matter. They're going to quest up to 10. I think they're feeling the finality of their board state here. So, John Silver. I do not like running John Silver into Miss Bianca here. I'm going to be fine if they challenge back into Bagheera because it's got bodyguards, so they've got to. And it's not my favorite trade, but it protects the rest of my cards, but I'm not going to run it in there. So, I make a mistake here again. I heal Denahi, which should have forced him to challenge into Miss Bianca. Riley and I both forgot about the fact that because it didn't have to challenge last turn, so forgot about the fact that it should have had to challenge into Miss Bianca here. So I shouldn't have healed it. You don't have to heal, by the way. Could have just played it to draw a card to cycle. So, sorry Riley, made another mistake. Once again, makes no difference whatsoever. But I made him another mistake. Denahi should be in the discard. Yeah. Sick. Sick run out. I really would have been curious how this played out. So I challenged Riley to play another game after this. I took Bagheera out of the deck to see how it would play without it. Because I really would have been curious to play this game out exactly as it played out, but without Bagheera. And forced me to figure out how I deal with Perla questing and Pascal sitting back. Would have been interesting. But such is not the case, so we're on to round 3. We got Jamie around 3. Jamie is a player down from Aegis. Shout out Aegis Games down in Bellingham. You all know my current favorite LGS, those screen-free games in Semiahmoo, which is a very short walk instead of a 45-minute drive away, is really playing with my heart and tempting me to pick a new favorite. I don't know that I can. Love you both. But yeah, Jamie's joining us. This was actually filmed at Screen Free Games in Semiahmoo, which, by the way, if you are in the White Rock, South Surrey, Langley area, we're playing on Saturdays. Screen Free Games, the Semiahmoo Mall in South Surrey, White Rock area. Please come. I really need it to work. I need to be able to walk or just have a short distance to a league sometimes, please. Plus, Anthony there, really great owner. Really enjoying their own YouTube. Really enjoying how they run their store, how they're trying to build the community. So, props to them. I'll put some info about them in the show notes. But this was filmed there, and Jamie came up from the States along with actually the owner of Aegis, which is why I love them as well. The fact that he's coming up to play games because he just loves to play games. So Lee from Aegis was up here as well from the States. We had some US contingent in our Canada draft. Jamie, very good player. Big into multiplayer, which I respect. I haven't got into as much as I'd like, but I really enjoy playing multiplayer. Curious if any of you do, but hopefully the hand, now that I've been ranting for a little bit, spoke for itself. But again, when I'm on the draw, I'm looking for more controlling cards. When I'm on the play, I'm looking for more aggressive cards, aggressive questers. Okay, my opponent drops an evasive, which I believe at this time I don't currently have an answer to, if I remember correctly. So that's something that I'm kind of concerned about at this point, but that's okay. I think Mim, yeah, all is found. Okay, Heath has finally realized that all is found is ink. Okay, great news, everyone. It has finally dawned on me that I should be inking all is found. I choose not to quest here because I want to run Denahi into the Phantom Blot, so I don't want them to trade with Raja. I want to hang on to it. I think that's fine. It's one extra lore. I'm not that worried about it. As opposed to the Toby quest earlier that should have been. This is one of those situations where I think that's perfectly reasonable to hold back a turn. Still don't know how I'm dealing with Mirabelle, but luckily it's only questing for one. Looks like Jamie has the same idea. One lore isn't worth letting Denahi eat the Phantom Blot. Though at that point, they would have been able to run Dr. Calico into it, but then Dr. Calico wouldn't have had the resist at that point, so maybe that's what they're thinking. But Drizella deals with Dr. Calico well enough. So, yeah. I'm okay with where things are at now. I'm behind because I don't have an evasive, and I don't really have a great excuse for questing here. I think about it for a moment and then realize that is a terrible idea into Dr. Calico. At least I hope that's what I thought. Do I quest? Am I baiting Dr. Calico? Is that what's happening here? I am. Look at me baiting Dr. Calico. Oh, yes, that's why. Okay. So I sing so much to give. I'm learning my own plays at this point. To give Denahi bodyguard. So they're forced to run into Denahi, which you'll see in a moment would require them to run both Dr. Calico and Phantom Blot into Denahi to take care of it, which I think is a perfectly reasonable play. Yep. Notice I don't even put the damage on it yet, and I'm reminding of the resist too. Oh yes, because Jamie was thinking it trades here. I'm like, no. It takes 1 damage. Yeah, I like this play now that I remembered so much to give what's in my hand. Because forcing my opponent to use 2 characters and trade one of them in order to deal with Denahi, I think is perfectly reasonable. When Drizella is going to be able to then eat Dr. Calico on the swing back. Especially when we've got Bagheera to then protect things. So, that was my intention. Baymax obviously messes with that math. However, shifting Baymax and Exerted I don't particularly love. But obviously better than taking 3 damage, right? But at that point you could have shifted it in, dealt with the Denahi by itself. Yes, and it would have 3 damage on it, but then Phantom Blot would still be around? I don't know. I'm not sure that I'd love shifting the Baymax just period. This is the problem I have with shift, right? Like obviously having a 5/5/2 lore on the board is amazing. But losing a card for that? I don't know how I feel like about that. Because it's effectively like Dr. Calico was removed and my opponent just got a slightly cheap 5/5/2 lore. Right? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's still a 5/5. 5/5 means business. But let's say they challenge into Bagheera here. It trades, right? And then there's 2 damage on Mirabelle. And obviously, hopefully they wouldn't play Kronk in that situation. But they are ahead on lore. So I think rightfully so. They should be questing here because I can't obviously challenge in with Bagheera. So what do we do here? What do you do in this situation? We've got Bucky. We've got Mim. I think I regrettably, just because everything else in my hand is so much more powerful, I regrettably ink Bucky. Yeah. As strong as he is, he's strong for a 3-drop. He is not stronger than either Mim or John Silver. I do not want to just run something into Baymax in order to play John Silver here. So I think Mim is the right play, especially since that'll allow me to maybe get some advantageous challenges in with Drizella or Raja, depending on my opponent's next plays. I've got the bodyguard out, so I very rightfully quest, which is going to keep me on par with my opponent, so that they're not getting so far ahead that I'm chasing. We're just kind of both laddering up to 20. And I think that's a strong position to be in when I'm probably going to want to be challenging in the not too distant future. Snow White, unfortunate. Much like Mirabelle, practically evasive, but even better than evasive. With 1 small counter to Snow White, but thankfully I got 2 of them in the deck. And look, there's one of them. So, normally you'd want to be questing with Mim, but I need damage on something, and everything else trades. So Mim's going into Kronk, because Panic can then deal with that annoying Snow White. I don't know why I even thought about this. Maybe I thought, should I put John Silver out? Should I put Mittens out? No. Just get rid of that Snow White before it's too late. I maybe should have put out John Silver there. I don't know. They would have gotten 2 more lore. So I think I was doing the math here. Yeah, they would have been at 16 if I did that. And then what? Do they challenge into? No, they don't challenge into anything here because of Bagheera. So my opponent's just trying to race. And that's really the only answer to Bagheera, by the way. It's just racing. You have to make it so that the bodyguard doesn't matter because you don't want to be challenging your opponent's characters. You've got to make it so that they have to chase you. Bagheera, I mentioned this in the review, its only fault is it's bad from behind. Right? Because it has to be banished on your opponent's turn for that effect to come into play. And look at this miracle card off the top. Off the top rope. It's Panic into the ring. Oh, goodbye Cusco. And now at this point, it's game over. Yeah, my opponent getting to 17. So I made the mistake earlier of not challenging when I was going to be able to win next turn. My opponent getting to 17 is not problematic. There's no way they're winning from that position. So, yeah, this was a close one until that panic. If I didn't get that panic off the top, that first one, that might have been a rough state. But having 2 of them in the deck, the fact that I got both of them. All right, Toby again. Toby and Phantom Blot. Now, the danger here, thankfully I don't have a ton of uninkables in my deck. The danger here is keeping 2 uninkables and then potentially drawing more, but Mittens is one of my only other uninkables in the deck, and it's going to go away. And I'm keeping the Restore the Heart mainly as kind of guaranteed ink and a card that I wouldn't necessarily mind playing later in the game. Obviously, it doesn't pair very well with 1 willpower characters, but I'm assuming that is not going to be the last characters I play. All right, so we end up with kind of a lackluster hand, other than the fact that Lady pairs very well with this hand. We got 3 2-drops or less that we're going to want to see on the board, and we have to see Toby and Phantom Blood on the board because they're uninkable, so they're going to work very well with Lady. I'm going to get some really good value out of that Lady. So although the rest of the hand's lackluster, the fact that I'm effectively going to draw 2 cards off Lady is going to make up for that lack of card quality. Alright, so we got Phantom Blood as the obvious play here. Do we ink Baymax or do we ink Taka? I believe I end up inking Taka, but much like I was talking about earlier, do I ink Baymax here? And the reason I don't is because before I had a 2, 3, 4, 5 play lined up. And this time I don't necessarily have that. I've got a lot of low drops, so I might get to a point where I do want to play a 1-drop and a 2-drop later on. So in this case, I think it was the right play. This is what I was referring to earlier, where I play Restoring the Heart on Raja, and it still doesn't feel amazing. But I couldn't play Baymax there, because obviously then Raja would just eat Baymax, and I want to quest for 2 at some point. So this is a perfect time to be playing Baymax. I don't know if I play it here or not, but if Perla runs into it, I'm thrilled. Yeah, there we go. So Baymax comes out here, because what am I worried about? Perla running into it? Thanks, great. So this guarantees that I'm going to be able to quest with Baymax. Assuming it doesn't have like a Phantom Blot or something, right? So I didn't play Orville here because Orville wasn't doing anything for me against Perla. And Baymax is questing for 2 and I wanted to get it out when it wasn't threatened, right? Versus if I'd played Orville last turn, definitely couldn't play Baymax here. But also I don't want to be questing with Baymax here because of Gizmo Duck. So I know I've got a bodyguard in my hand, so I'm just going to hold back for this turn and look to play my bodyguard next turn. They're questing for 1 each turn. If they quest with Gizmo Duck, that's fine as well. So I play the Beagles here. And I think at this point, I ask, can I take that back? And then I say, no, I shouldn't do that. The comments will roast me. Roast me away. This was the wrong play. I think I should have played Jebediah because Toby then could have challenged into Gizmo Duck if my opponent quested with it. I was thinking, I want to give Mittens Rush so it can challenge into Gizmo Duck. But I'd much rather trade Toby with Gizmo Duck than to put 4 damage on my 5 willpower bodyguard. So I think I should have been putting out Jebediah here and then assuming that my opponent was foolish enough to quest with Gizmo Duck, which they are not, I would have then quested with Jebediah, pumped up Toby, challenged him with Toby, and put out a full willpower bodyguard to protect Jebediah. But I didn't. So, still end up doing with that anyway, and then just questing with the Beagles just for 2 lore, because I got nothing better to do because they didn't quest with Gizmo Duck. Now, this exposes me to Gizmo Duck on Mittens, but obviously I can't take it out on its own. But unfortunately, it does have Perla. But I thought about it for a while. I remember, I'm like, worst case scenario, they trade Mittens for Gizmo Duck. They don't really have much other threats on the board. And assuming they quest with Coda, it allows me to deal with Coda without really fear of repercussion there. So, yeah, I think I'm relatively fine with that. I don't love it, but I accepted my fate, as it were. As it stands, I don't remember if they did or not. They might not have. We shall see. Normally I cut out the thinking part. I don't know why I didn't here. But yes, my opponent thought about it for a little bit. They just ended up questing out, which I think is almost certainly a mistake. I feel like I would have definitely traded Gizmo Duck for Mittens there. Because it's still way too early in the game to be racing. And this is where I don't know if I BM or not, but I say, look at me, my hand's so good, I don't even need Diablo. I ink Diablo here. And played Jebediah and Phantom Blot. So I mentioned the resist coming in a little earlier. I give Jebediah resist to himself. And then I quest with the Beagles and give it rush and resist 1. So it now has resist 2. So it's able to take out Gizmo Duck and survive. I was really happy with that. I'm like, hey, the resist from Jebediah actually came in handy. Oh, I take out that? That was dumb. I should have taken out Gizmo Duck, but that's fine. I mean, it would have been 2 damage on each rather than 4 damage on Mittens. I think I would have preferred that. 2 damage on Jebediah, 2 damage on Mittens versus 4 damage on Mittens. Maybe I just thought because Basil can take out Mittens regardless. Maybe that was my thinking. And that's probably fair. But for 3 lore, I was pretty confident that they were questing with Basil. So, yeah, I think I would have rather the 2 damage on Jebediah and the 2 damage on Mittens, but that's fine. Hey, look, it's Yzma. You all now get to see one of the many reasons why I think Yzma isn't particularly good. I mean, it's still a solid body, but they had to ink up to and pay 7 for it to get what is going to end up being a very lackluster ability. So, I get to rebuy potentially my bodyguard here. It so happens that I don't. They get rid of Mittens, but they give me a chance to rebuy my bodyguard, which I can tell you, I would have much rather than Lady in this situation. So Yzma in this case could have been a real negative. It ended up being a moot point, but that was a huge risk. So there was that, right? Now Toby's in my hand because I want the extra value. So I've got a lot of cards. I'm willing to take a risk that Toby's not the one discarded. As it stands, I got lucky, but still, whatever. If Keto's discarded, even if Lady was discarded, it's not the end of the world, right? Get Lady, get my value back before I take any risks with like the Phantom Blot or anything. Not that I could, actually, since the only thing's evasive. But, yeah. I thought, a 33% chance that I get to keep Lady. That's fine. If Lady was discarded, I'd play Kita and Toby, and I'm fine. So, my opponent, what are they going to do? They're going to banish something here, and pretty much everything they banish is better than Kita. So again, giving me a chance to keep the better card. I mean, Phantom Blot isn't, but that's fine. Even Baymax is better than Kita at this point because it's 2 lore. But certainly Beagles is better than Kita. So it's like, if you get... Yep. So look, I got to keep Beagles instead of Kita because of Yzma. I was so happy about that. And we're shifting in again Exerted, which... Why did we remove damage from an evasive character when we should have just hardcasted and put out a 5/5? I mean, at this point I was winning anyway, so. Look at me, I'm like, are we fist bumping here? What are we doing? What are we doing? And then Jamie goes for the fist bump, and I'm like, well, you banished my character. I gotta see it out. Oh. All right. We saw it through. Sorry this took so long to get out. I appreciate all of your patience. All, like, 50 of you that what? No, we got like 300 views on the last one. That was great. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll be frank, I was a little disappointed that we only got 300 views for all the so much work that goes into these, versus somehow getting like 4,000 views for my 20-minute review video. But I'm so grateful to all of you that have commented that you've enjoyed this, that you found it helpful, that you found it entertaining somehow. That feels great. So thank you for that. Thank you for commenting that. Thank you for sharing out those that did. Special shout out to Drew, by the way, who shared it out very enthusiastically. Drew is another limited lover like I am. So thank you very much, my friend. But I hope you enjoyed this one as well. Let me know what your thoughts. If you did put the deck together, post your Dreamborn link in the comments, because I'd love to see it and just compare how did your deck play out. Hope to see you all next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.